nobody better. So that's I'll look forward to hearing that as well.
So let's fire it up. Joe Christofek, the paddock commentator down at Churchill Downs, talking some Derby and undercard stakes. That's up now. The big event, the Kentucky Derby, Grade 1, $3 million up for grabs, a mile and a quarter, a field of 20. Again, Omaha Beach scratched, but that brings in Bodie Express. I went back and forth. Spinoff was the horse that was attracting me for the last couple of weeks, but with the 19, I just couldn't quite pull the trigger there. I put him underneath. I went with Tacitus on top. Then I used Spinoff in the second spot. I also have in the mix Win and Game Winner, but I'm interested in knowing what are your thoughts on the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, Tacitus has looked really good, like I said, in his training. Again, you have to look at, the Wood Memorial and the strength of it, and obviously, again, history does play a role, but I kind of take it year to year, but Wood Memorial hasn't been a great prep leading into the Derby in recent years. I really like the way this horse floats over the track. It would be great to see Bill Mott win a Derby. Yeah. I wouldn't argue with Tacitus at all. Again, a similar pick to the Oaks with my Derby pick. I went with Maximum Security. And again, I think there's holes that you could poke in this horse, and obvious ones. Debuted for $16,000. Son of New Year's Day, who is an indescript sire. His first two crops were so bad in the eyes of the buying public that he was shipped off to Brazil. He got a real soft pace in the Florida Derby. And all of those reasons are going to turn what should be a 5-1 shot into a 10-1 shot. And that's why I'm jumping on board. Although he made the lead in the Florida Derby, he finished really fast. He had another gear at the top of the stretch, Jason Service, with unconventional training methods, but it's equated to a 30% win percentage over the course of the last 2.5 years. And I don't know. I just think he's going to be a better price than he should be based on all the factors that I just mentioned. And for me, that's good enough to back him at the windows.
Yeah, and as I say, I'm a buyer's guy, and so to see a couple of triple-digit buyers in and amongst this crew this year that has had a lot of trouble throwing triple digits, that certainly jumps off the page to me. I'm going to be really interested to see what Maximum Security does on Saturday. All right, let's go a race earlier, the Turf Classic, Grade 1 event, $1 million up for grabs, mile and an eighth. It's a nice, full field. It's a fun field. Bricks and Mortar is in here for Chad and Klarovich. Synchrony is certainly a top-quality stakes turf runner. Kurban for Kieran and Shadwell. What are your thoughts on the Turf Classic?
Yeah, I'm not normally a fan of equipment changes in big races, but the blinkers on Synchrony really, really intrigues me in this race. And obviously the Muniz at Fairgrounds is the key race moving into this one because the top three finishers are all, especially Bricks and Mortar, obviously, major players. Marketoff gave Bricks and Mortar all he could handle that particular day. I will say that was a turf course down with the rails non-existent that favored inside speed types. That definitely helped Marketoff give Bricks and Mortar a run for his money. But Synchrony came running late. He's got an awesome turn of foot. We saw it in the Fairgrounds handicap. We saw it in some of his races last year. I think he was up against it a little bit from a pace perspective and also from a turf perspective in the March 23rd race. Third race off the layoff, blinkers on, likely to be maybe the third choice in the race, and I think that the value will be there for Synchrony, and hopefully Mike Stidham can get his first Grade 1 win with a horse that's certainly deserving of it.
All right, Joe, we appreciate the thoughts. We'll catch up with your other picks, selections, and whatnot on the couple of days of racing, as I say, with the paddock commentary over the next couple of days. And as I say, we're taping this on Thursday, so enjoy Thurby.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thurby leading into the Oaks and the Derby, and then we like to call it Sleep Sunday. I mean, I don't normally sleep past 7:30 in the morning, but that day I'll probably wake up a couple times and go right back to sleep and just kind of try to catch up on what I've lost the last 2 weeks.
It is 3 very long and exciting days. And again, for folks who aren't familiar, Thurby is now, I mean, basically, don't they bill it as kind of for the locals, which used to be Oaks Day, but over the past, couple of decades, the Oaks has become so popular that that's now Oaks Day is not as big as Derby, but it's bigger than most days at other racetracks that we'll have during the year. So again, Derby is kind of for the locals on Thursday.
Yeah, we got a couple stakes. We got 11 races. We got a band. Yeah, it's more for the locals, and we'll have a big crowd on Derby, and it keeps pushing further back in the week, opening Saturday, then resume on Tuesday. Just a festive time, man. You continue to see the crowds building, growing on the backstretch as we get closer, to Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The buzz back there, all the radio stations, all the interviews. It's just a fantastic time of year, and it all leads up to the greatest 2 minutes in sports.
And I'll ask you, because you're there, you've been there now for a couple of seasons, but I'm a fan. I've never been to the Derby. I've never been to Churchill, so that's still on the list. But watching on television when they play My Old Kentucky Home, you get kind of choked up, and to me, it signals springtime in America has come around again. But it has a certain emotional pull. What's it like to be there on track when they start playing My Old Kentucky Home?
Yeah, it's just something else. I mean, it's an out of body experience kind of sort of. That's the best way to put it. Everybody just knows, they're about to witness something special. You can feel that, in and amongst your friends and family and coworkers, and just the fans that are here. We're all kind of sharing that experience together. And I always tell people this, and this is my 5th year actually at Churchill. My first was American Pharoah's Triple Crown year. This will be the 5th year I've been doing this job, and the thing that I appreciate most about Churchill Downs is the fact that this place has so much history, and they keep building seats, and they keep, modernizing the place, and they keep doing things better and better and better. But kind of like Wrigley Field stuff, that doesn't lose any of its charm. It doesn't lose any of its history. They do a great job of maintaining that history while continuing to modernize the facility and making it more fan-friendly year to year. So, yeah, I love this place. I feel very privileged to do the job that I do, and really looking forward to doing it for many, many more years to come.
Well, we're all envious of you this Friday and Saturday, Oaks and Derby Day. It's going to be a lot of fun with a couple of nice stakes-laden cards and all the big names scheduled on each day. So looking forward to it, looking forward to your commentary. Joe, we always appreciate the visit.
All right, cool. I appreciate it as well. You guys have a fun Derby, and equally as important, have a profitable one. Joe
Christofek, Churchill Downs. Again, thanks to Joe Christofek for taking time. Had some of his thoughts yesterday on the Oaks, and today the Derby and undercard stakes as well. He does a great job. You can watch him on the pregame and all afternoon long with paddock commentary as well. Don't forget, coming up a little bit later, George Weaver. He's going to talk Vacoma. He's got some undercard stakes as well. Mike Trombetta has win-win-win. We have them coming up. But right now, we're going to be joined by Randy Moss from NBC. Again, did these interviews on Thursday as it's a hectic weekend for everybody. It was just easier to schedule things a couple of days ago. So Randy Moss had been prepping for the NBC broadcast. Always brings a lot to the table when we talk racing with Randy at this time of year. Of course, up at the Saratoga backstretch set, we talked Travers. He and Jerry Bailey bouncing around the backstretch, getting some insights on this year's Kentucky Derby. Up next, Randy Moss of NBC Sports. Randy Moss from the NBC broadcast team. He'll have coverage of Derby Day, obviously. Plenty of wall-to-wall coverage back. Randy, good morning.
Good morning. Never started to rain.
That's what we've been talking to some folks on the ground, and unfortunately, it looks like that's going to be the game plan. But that's you play the game outdoors. That's what happens sometimes. First thing I have to ask, speaking of talking to people down there already, everybody that's there, I've asked the same thing. First question: as you've been rambling around the backstretch, any buzz horses this week?
As you know, there's always a buzz horse that pops up on Derby week based on, visual observations of the way that horses are training. And I think that particular horse this week has been by my standards, who is, by all accounts, looked exceptional in the mornings. I mean, we're too busy walking around talking to trainers and stuff to actually have binoculars and stuff on the morning workouts. But fortunately, they put the video online, so that helps. And, he's doing very well. And I expect him to run pretty well.
Omaha Beach scratched last night. Obviously, that affects things, given that he was the morning line favorite, but maybe more so even pace-wise. And I know part of the NBC broadcast is often a pace scenario is put up. Was there a scramble in the graphics department as far as anticipated pace after the Omaha Beach scratch?
Not so much a scramble because of pace, because we're not doing that sort of visual element that we have been doing for the Derby, where you see the sort of the projection of how we think the race is going to be run from a graphics perspective. Plenty of scrambling on the production side, though, because we had a Mike Smith feature, we had a Bob Baffert feature that had a Mike Smith element in it about Omaha Beach. So yeah, plenty of behind-the-scenes stuff going on. As far as the effect from a pace perspective, I mean, my colleague Jerry Bailey had it kind of figured out that from his number 12 post, Omaha Beach was likely, because he breaks so well and is so tactical, to put some pressure on Maximum Security to his inside, who then, it was sort of like a domino effect, who then would put a little pressure on Vekoma to his inside, who then would ramp up pressure on War of Will, who's expected to be hustled from the rail. And that would create a scenario where the pace could be faster than it looks like it would otherwise be on paper. But now with Omaha Beach out, I'm expecting the pace setter role to fall to either War of Will if he breaks well, with Vekoma stalking, or if War of Will doesn't break all that well again, then Vekoma, I think, would go to the lead. And I'm expecting Maximum Security to be forwardly placed, but to be sitting outside of those horses, tracking them.
Let me ask you about Maximum Security, because I went back and forth. I didn't put him in my mix. I liked him Florida Derby Day. We had talked to Jason Service. We were down there for the Florida Derby and went over to Palm Meadows on Thursday, and we're talking about the horse. And I liked him Florida Derby Day. I don't have him in the mix on Saturday, but I may be kicking myself. And I know you're a figure maker, and that's what I'm kind of keying on. The buyer figures are a big part of my handicapping toolbox. And you look now, the scratch Omaha Beach, Maximum Security, not only the only lone triple-digit buyer figure horse in the race, but he's got two of them. So am I making a mistake leaving him out?
I don't like him either. And I help make the buyer figures. So there you go. I mean, it's when you're a handicapper, horse player, you're sort of trained that if a horse runs a big figure under absolutely optimal, perfect race trip conditions that he's unlikely to get today, then you don't bet on him. You don't like him. And so given the fact that the way the Florida Derby shaped up, where Javier Castellano took back on Hidden Scroll for some reason going into the first turn, and Maximum Security was gifted the early lead in almost 49 seconds per a half mile, that's clearly not going to happen in the Kentucky Derby. Just from a ground loss perspective, he's probably going to be 3 wide. And so, that makes him, around both turns, 3 or 4 lengths slower than he was in the Florida Derby. And also, he won't have the benefit of an uncontested lead. Now, having gone through all that, Seth, that's the same reason that I justified picking against Justify last year in the Kentucky Derby, because he had a similarly easy trip when he won at Santa Anita that he wasn't going to get at Churchill Downs. Then he didn't, and he won anyway. So, yeah, that's sort of the point-counterpoint there.
Yeah, I look at him and I think, Sunday morning will I be kicking myself. Let me get a little overview, the field in general, but more the prep season. What are your thoughts on the prep season this year? I know, obviously, NBC, you were covering a lot of the important prep races, but I looked it up a couple of days ago. There were 26 Derby point races this year. Overall, there were some last year as a 2-year-old, in the 2-year-old season as well. But this year, 26 Derby point races. There were 23 different winners. And it seems like it's shaping up maybe a lot like last year without a Justify to kind of be the cream that rises to the top. But what were your thoughts on the prep season this year?
Yeah, it's always hard to judge the quality of these horses when they get to the Kentucky Derby nowadays because they run so infrequently.
Yeah.
You've got Maximum Security with only 4 lifetime starts. I mean, we still don't even really know how good he is. Jason Service doesn't really know how good he is, So we're all still learning about these horses. Last year, we thought that it was an exceptional crop of 3-year-olds. And as it turned out, in hindsight, it was one exceptional 3-year-old at Justify, and then a bunch of horses that turned out to be big disappointments. This year, I would say that they don't quite look as good as they did last year coming into the Derby, but maybe they'll turn out to be better. It's hard to gauge at this point because they're so lightly raced.
Yeah, and that's what my feeling. As I say, it seems like with them, somebody would step forward this year and run big, and then the next race not so much, and somebody new would step forward, which to me was a lot like last year until you got to the final set of preps where I thought they separated themselves, and I went into last year thinking, this is a pretty strong field, but I came out of the Triple Crown thinking just what you said. It was Justify, and then another bunch of horses, and the 3-year-old crop didn't kind of come together again until late summer with horses like Catholic Boy. I'm wondering if this year isn't much of the same. And again, the chance was there that maybe an Omaha Beach, or who knows, maybe Game Winner can come back to farm and be that cream that rises to the top. Now Omaha Beach out, obviously, but there are a couple in here that have that potential. But again, to me, it just has a feel a lot like last year.
Yeah, to me, looking at the final preps, I thought the Arkansas Derby was the most impressive of the final preps, and of course now Omaha Beach is out. After that, I would have given the Wood Memorial a slight advantage over the Santa Anita Derby, just because of the trouble that Tacitus overcame at the beginning of the race, and the determination to be able to win anyway. Having said that, and then I would have put the Bluegrass after that, and then the Louisiana Derby after that. But having said that, when you look at Game Winner, he was beaten in the Santa Anita Derby, but there were some circumstances involved. First of all, Bob Baffert has fallen on the sword and has blamed himself for the instructions that he gave Joel Rosario. Baffert was worried about Instagram stealing away to an easy early lead and taking the race wire to wire. And without any other competing speed in the race, his instructions to Rosario were to use Game Winner early more than usual, to try to make sure that he ratcheted up the pressure a little bit on Instagram. Also, a side benefit to that, I must add, would be that he needed a first or second place finish from Roadster to get both of them into the Kentucky Derby. And that's exactly what happened. In hindsight, I think Game Winner was the best horse in the race. I don't think he was ridden the way he likes to be ridden. He was also 4 wide on both turns. So when you look at the Santa Anita Derby, I didn't think it was all that strong from a figure perspective, but I think Game Winner was a lot better than that would indicate.
Yeah, and it's Bob Baffert, and obviously his success, all 3 of his horses are going to be interesting to watch on Saturday. I'd love to get, again, going back to nuts and bolts of handicapping. We talked figures a couple of minutes ago, but I want to touch on a horse that I found interesting for the past 2 or 3 weeks and then got stuck in the 19, now the 18 spin-off. And I'd love to get your thoughts on the layoff. Spin-off, to me, I thought the layoff from the Louisiana Derby, where at the top of the stretch I thought he looked a winner, and then by my standards kind of snuck up on the inside. But boy, I go back to the day when the Wood Memorial and the Bluegrass were within a couple of weeks of the Kentucky Derby, and now 6 weeks out, it's hard for me to overcome that. But I was going to use Spin-Off from, the outside post. I moved him down to the second spot and put Tacitus on top. But horses like Spin-Off and Cutting Humor, what are your thoughts on a layoff like that coming into the Kentucky Derby?
Nowadays, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, that's my thought too.
Yeah, I remember coming to the Kentucky Derby. I've been coming to the Derby for a long time. I remember when the thought was that the Santa Anita Derby was way too far away from the Kentucky Derby in 4 weeks, and that those horses were at a big disadvantage. That was when the Bluegrass was 9 days before the Kentucky Derby. The Arkansas Derby and the Wood were 2 weeks out. So times have certainly changed. I mean, if you ask a guy like Todd Fletcher, right, Spin-Off and Cutting Humor, he would rather have 5 or 6 weeks than have 3 weeks. So I don't think the layoff bothers me. About Spin-Off in particular, I thought he was the best horse in the Louisiana Derby given the trip that he got. But in my personal handicapping opinion, by my standards, has progressed since then. I'm not sure Spin-Off has. And I also have more of a concern about Spin-Off at 1.25 miles, since by my standards ran him down in the last furlong with a better trip, but he still was able to run him down at 1.125 miles in the Louisiana Derby.
And I have those same concerns, but I'm just looking at, boy, I saw that comeback race down at Tampa. That was great.
It was huge. It was huge.
Yeah, and the Louisiana Derby is only a second start of the year, very lightly raced. And for me, the layoff, I'm with you. It's not as much of a concern now as it was certainly when I first got into the game. As I say, it's completely changed. But more importantly, again, I think for a guy like Pletcher, that kind of a layoff is right in his wheelhouse.
I do too. I totally agree with you, Seth.
All right, you've already kind of alluded to it, but I watched the Arkansas Derby broadcast, and at the end of that, you said game winner was the direction you were going to go. Is that still the way you're going to go on Saturday?
Yeah, 24 hours ago, the direction I was going was game winner if the track was dry, and Omaha Beach if the track was muddy or sloppy, since he has, I think, in my opinion, the two best races of his life were on a sloppy racetrack. Knowing, of course, that looking at the forecast, it's almost certainly going to be raining on Saturday, and that the likelihood was the sloppy or muddy track. So now that Omaha Beach is out, to me, game winner is clearly the horse to beat. It was, to me, it was almost a coin flip between the two when he was in.
And again, for me, my Clever Horses spinoff, I was going to put him on top until the post position draw. So there's my Clever 30-1 on the morning line. Do you have a Clever pick on the day?
There you go. I think win, and by my standards, are the two long shots, 20-1 or so, that have the best chance. I actually like the jockey change from Irad Ortiz to Julian Pimentel on win. I think the horse has been getting too far behind in his last couple of starts with Irad. Irad ran him into trouble in the Bluegrass. Wasn't one of his more stellar rides. And Pimentel knows the horse very well from earlier in Win-Win's career. I don't think he needs to be as far back as he's been. And I don't have a problem with Win at a mile and a quarter. As far as by my standards, the Buzz horse, like we were talking about, he's training very well. And I think he'll take a step forward from what we saw at the fairgrounds.
And again, let me hit on one more at the top of my mix, because I have spin-off in the second spot, win in the third spot, and your game winner in the fourth spot. But Tacitus is my top pick. What are your thoughts there?
I could totally see that. He's improving with every race. I loved his win in the Wood Memorial, given what he overcame at the start of the race. And as a son of Tappet, I mean, he doesn't have the personality of most Tappets. Most horses who are by the sire Tappet, for your listeners, if they don't know this, tend to be very temperamental, very quirky, very hard to train. This horse is not. This horse takes more after his damn close hatches, who was a real sweetheart and a very laid-back disposition. But when you have that much trouble at the start of a race like he had in the Wood Memorial, which wiped out a couple of horses, I was wondering if the Tappet and it might come out at that point, if he might say, the heck with this. But he held in there very well. He's been looking good. Bill Mott's been in a great mood all week long. I think he thinks that the horse is doing very, very well. And I think the question is just going to be, is he good enough? What's his talent level as opposed to game winner and others?
Yeah, again, I'm not sure. This race may be a lot like last year, and so the crop still has to define itself. But I will say, I think from a betting perspective, it's going to be a fun Saturday with a field of 20 that you can make a case for. I think 18 of them probably. Maybe the Japanese horse I just don't know what to do with, and maybe the couple of horses coming out of the UAE Derby I'm a little bit suspicious of, but otherwise I don't think I'd be shocked in any direction. And currently the favorite, a nice 7-2 on the morning line.
Yeah, even Cutting Humor, who might be 40-1. When you look at the numbers, and all the numbers people have it the same way. The Sunland Park Derby was a fast race, and he did it running outside on the turn. So even a horse like that, in hindsight, people might be saying, well, yeah, we should have paid a little more attention to the Sunland Park Derby. I guess those numbers were right. So it's a good field.
Yeah,
balanced field.
About 7:30 on Saturday night, there will be a horse that the majority of people will say, yeah, I should have had because you can make a case for all of them. Exactly. They're all going to be played, but not played by the majority of people, and so everybody will be kicking themselves. But hopefully we will be cashing some tickets. Randy, we appreciate the visit. We certainly look forward to the NBC coverage. You guys do a great job. Always look forward to Oaks and Derby weekend, and certainly look forward again to seeing you throughout the Triple Crown and up in Saratoga later in the season.
All right. Thanks so much, Seth. Enjoyed it.
Randy Moss from NBC Sports. They'll have the great coverage of the Oaks and Derby Friday and Saturday. This is a good time to remind you, same yesterday, if folks are looking at the network later today and the Churchill races aren't on, we'll have the early races, and I believe the guys in the control room can yell out to me. Get the 2 races after the Derby too. Yeah. So the early races, the 2 races after the Derby, but when the stakes coverage starts, that contractually goes to NBC. So the early stakes are on NBCSN, the sports network, the Derby over on NBC. But again, we can't show those just contractually. So we'll have the early races at Churchill, the later races at Churchill. But that's why you can't see the stakes action just contractually. And also, I should remind folks, if you were watching yesterday and we were off the air for a little while, again, apologies. We had an electrical situation. There was a electrical outage. Our generator kicked in, which is supposed to power everything up, but there was a bad breaker. So again, apologies for that. We scrambled around and got things up. So again, watch this NBC coverage. Of course, you watch all after you've got the calls race or a low party punch there. Hopefully, we're all interested. Continue to play that with the project we because home in Derby when the rest he's also of course under in 6 so I'm sure you. Okay,
Good morning.
Let's jump in and talk a little Vekoma. Let's go back and watch the Bluegrass back on April 6th. Vekoma will be the number 2 horse here, getting it done. Win runs late. Signalman is 3rd in this one. But Vekoma, it was a nice win, chart margin of 3.5. George, what was your takeaway from the Bluegrass?
Well, we needed the horse to move forward off of that race in the Fountain of Youth. You know, the Fountain of Youth was a race. Going back, that was the point, but no longer be tremendous.
And talk about you, because they finished behind Code of Honor and Bourbon War. Again, for the seasonal debut, first time around 2 turns, I thought that was a good starting point. What were your thoughts after the Fountain of Youth?
Yeah, we felt the same way. I mean, look, you're always disappointed when you lose. And, you know, on the face of it, you know, we got mixed signals. You know, we're trying to figure out if the horse can go 2 turns. So initially you're like, well, does that mean he's not as good at 2 turns, or did he just kind of need a race? And once we got the numbers back on the race, kind of reevaluated afterwards, we're like, you know what, that was a very, very good race off the bench. And now it's going to be up to him to take that move forward, and thank goodness he did. He went up to the Bluegrass and showed up, and, you know, we added another 16th of a mile, and he seemed to handle it pretty well.
Talk about the Bluegrass just from a personal perspective, because I know this week I've been reading a lot and seeing some video of you as a Kentucky guy. Obviously, the Derby would be a real feather in your cap, but a Bluegrass victory had to be pretty pleasing as well.
For sure. My parents took me to the Bluegrass Stakes when I was young. You know, we went to see them frequently when I was growing up, and back in the day, they used to run the Bluegrass on the Thursday, 9 days before the Derby. And my mom and dad would take us out of school, me and my brother, and we'd go to the Bluegrass. And so, you know, to win the Bluegrass was special, and I was able to bring my son up there, and he got to enjoy it. And you know, it was a great feeling. You know, the Bluegrass win would, you know, probably mean more to me than if I won the Wood or Florida Derby or some other races. You know, it was something I grew up with and very nostalgic for us.
I don't know them, but I like your parents already. Took their kids out of school to go to the Bluegrass.
Yep.
Yeah, God bless them. Give us a little the thinking behind. You came out of the Fountain of Youth, and then the next race was the Bluegrass. You trained down in Florida, Palm Beach Downs, before the Bluegrass, and then after the Bluegrass, back to Palm Beach Downs. Nice bullet workout on the 26th of April down there. What was the game plan and the thinking to return to Florida for the training up to the Kentucky Derby?
Well, anytime you're planning for some big races, you need to think about the logistics of how you want to get it done. After the Bluegrass, obviously the horse was already in Kentucky, but, you know, my wife's been getting him all winter, and you know, he has been used to and accustomed to Palm Beach Downs where we train. The facilities, you know, it's a great training center. It's quiet. And, you know, in order for my wife to continue getting on him and working with him and the horse being in familiar surroundings, that's what we had to do. I could have stayed in Kentucky, but, you know, now that I look back and see how the weather's been here, there's been a lot of temperature changes and a lot of rain and precipitation. It might rain here Derby Day, but I certainly am glad I made a decision. It was really a no-brainer once I thought about it. You know, we were able to fly back, and you know, the horse settled back into his own surroundings, and, you know, familiar horses and familiar people that he knew, and And I think it was the best thing for the horse, and we're very happy the way he's coming into the race.
Talk a little bit about that workout last Friday, 59 and change. How'd he go?
He went real well. I mean, we needed a solid work, and he gave it to us. He worked with he's been working with Majestic Dunhill for the last few works, early this winter and into the spring. And, Majestic Dunhill is a very good workhorse and can give Vekoma the company he needs to get a useful work out of him. So Vekoma's not a lazy horse, and he could work by himself, but I just like the way he works in company and just kind of an insurance that we get the move that we need. But Javier was very pleased with the horse. He thought the horse worked great. And, visually it looked good, and the horse came out of it well. So, it's always nice to go into a big race off of a big whip like that, for sure.
When did he arrive in Kentucky, and how is he acclimated?
He flew up on Tuesday, and he settled in fine. He galloped yesterday and today. He's going to gallop tomorrow, but he settled in fine. And, he had shipped well into Keeneland. I wasn't really too worried about the ship. He seemed to handle it very well.
He's also, talk a little bit for a moment about, he has an unusual stride that a lot of people comment on, and I've read your comments on it, that's just the way he's always gone.
Yeah, he's got, people notice that his legs he goes wide in front, especially the left front when he's, under full pressure, and that's just kind of the way he moves. He's not really flipping or paddling down low. I think he's carrying his front leg wide out of his shoulder. I think it comes up through his shoulder where he carries that. But he moves the way he moves. The horse is very talented. I'm not really concerned about the way he moves. I'm just glad that he can move as fast as he moves.
I read a comment you made like that. I kind of liked it. You said I'd rather have one that runs like that and wins than one that runs perfect and doesn't win.
Yeah. And all the riders that ever been on, they're like, wow, it's not like he feels like a clunker or feels like all the riders that have been on is like he's built, and they don't feel any abnormalities when they're sitting on him. So he's got a very efficient way of going, and he's an athlete.
Upshot, what are you expecting on Saturday afternoon?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Yeah, what is your upshot? What are you expecting on Saturday afternoon from Vekoma?
I expect, look, this horse, he's in the zone. Mentally, he knows what he's here for, and I know that he believes he can win it. He's very high on himself right now, and he's going to give 110%. And, the Derby's a special event. You've got horses coming from California, New York, Arkansas, Florida, all from these different divisions, and some of them have raced against each other, and some of them haven't. And now's the time where you put them all against each other and see what happens. It's a great handicapping puzzle for horse racing fans, and it's just the greatest racing, greatest race in the country.
Well, we certainly wish you a lot of good luck in the Derby, and he's clearly very talented, as we've seen by the record so far. So good luck on Saturday afternoon in, again, the Derby. But let's talk a couple undercard stakes. The Distaff Turf Mile, you have Daddy is a Legend. She hasn't been seen since running second in the Matriarch. We're going to take a look at that stretch run. Number 13 will be Uni for Chad Brown. Daddy is a Legend, the number 7, runs second. Again, that was the last race, the last time we saw Daddy's a Legend. As a buyer's guy, that triple digit in the Matriarch stands out. Been working over at Keeneland. How's Daddy's a Legend coming into Saturday's race?
Yeah, she's doing really well. The owner, Jim Hilly, always gives his horses a break during the winter, and she had a nice campaign as a 3-year-old, so we got a little break over the winter, and now she's coming back as a 4-year-old. And wow, the Matriarch was it was a huge race to end your 3-year-old campaign. First time against older mares, and I always wanted to get her back to a flat mile. I think it's her best distance, but for her to run that big against older mares, it was a good sign for what we'd be able to, that we're going to have some fun with her this year. So we're looking forward to getting her up, getting over there Saturday, and she's training really well. She's a barn favorite, and we're glad to have her back in action.
And Vekoma, again, down at Palm Beach Downs to work, but Daddy is a Legend has been working at Keeneland. What was the game plan there?
Well, Jim Hill has I don't know if you're aware of it, but he has a Margot Farm as a big training operation and layup facility he has in Midway, Kentucky. It's a beautiful place.
Okay.
He's done a lot of investing in it. They've got all kinds of just great facilities, paddocks, barns, you name it. They have all kinds of things. The layup horses, and they've got a synthetic track there that they train on, a teardrop shaped thing. But it's a really, really nice place. And so they start training the horses there. Probably mid-January, early February, thinking about getting horses started in the spring. He likes to run a Keeneland quite a bit. Initially, I think she missed a work because of a foot right there in the tail end of March before we brought her in. So instead of running a Keeneland, we ended up the timing of it just put us in this race this Saturday. But that's why she came straight to Keeneland. They don't, didn't make any sense that she was training there. It didn't make any sense to send her down to Florida and then back up. They've got we worked her on the grass every time at Keeneland. They got the grass course there. So, that was just, what works out for her. Every horse has a certain program that best fits them, and for her, that was the best program to come to this race.
Sure. Daddy is a legend in the Distaff Turf Mile, and the previously mentioned Majestic Dunhill. Boy, this is a salty edition of the Churchill Downs Grade 1 event for sprinters going 7 furlongs. This horse, as you mentioned, was working with Vekoma down at Palm Beach Downs in that nice 59-4 just last Friday. Comes out of a 6th place finish in the Commonwealth. Going to pull up a replay, though, and take a look at the General George back on February 16th. Uncontested, the number 3 will be the winner. Majestic Dunhill, the number 1, makes a nice late run to wind up second in here at 25-1. This horse spent a lot of the career on the turf. The last 4 races have been on the dirt at 7 furlongs. And as a buyer's guy, the buyers have been moving in a nice direction and seem to have appreciated this turf sprinting according to the numbers. What do you expect on Saturday for Majestic Dunhill, as I say, in a very salty edition of the Churchill Downs?
Well, yeah, he's this horse. It's not going to surprise me if he wins it. He's got a big race with his name on it. If it's Saturday, it's great. If not, it'll be later on in the year. He's very talented. He's really stepped up his game in his workouts. When he was a 2-year-old, he was a little unfocused and could be a little bit of a clown. He seemed like he was from his workouts that he was a little better on the grass. So we kind of started him on the grass early on. Broke his maiden at Saratoga, and we continued along those lines. So, after he ran at Del Mar, I think there's the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint race over there. He had an outside post and didn't fare well, but we gave him a break over the winter, and because he had been so unfocused, we went ahead and made him a gelding. So he came back really good as a 3-year-old, and we kept him on the grass just because in my mind, I just felt like that was his best gig. But and he won a 1 at Ann, a stake at Monmouth. He caught a real soft turf up there at Saratoga. Then he came back and ran a huge race at Kentucky Downs. And then I was kind of stuck. I was like, well, I don't know where to run him. The turf kind of ran out, and he had to work out there at Belmont late in the fall last year, and he worked extremely well on the dirt. And I called the owner. I said, we need to run. I told him, we need to run this horse on the dirt. And right around the corner was that City of Laurel Stakes that he won, and ever since then he's been opening up new dimensions for us. He's very, very talented. He's very talented. The race in the General George didn't surprise me at all, and even the Commonwealth last time, he was just a victim circumstance. There's supposed to be a hot pace in the race, it didn't materialize, and I had told Iraq to ride the horse like a closer, and we were too far off of a slow pace. So I still think he is a closer, but I'm going to Manny Frankel's riding him, and I'm going to, when I talk to him about the race, I'm going to tell him, hey, if you feel like you're going 46, you can't be 7, 8, 9 lengths off of it. You got to be up on, up there so that you're not trying to catch fresh horses from the quarter pole home.
Wish you a lot of good luck with all the runners on Saturday. I want to just get an update on one more, though. The Oaks, you have the also eligible Point of Honor. I assume as we're talking on Thursday, I think they've gone to scratch time already. Did she make it in? And if not, and she was too deep on the A list, if not, what's up next for Point of Honor?
Probably go to the Black Eyed Susan if she then gets in. I looked the other day. I thought the scratch time might see 9 o'clock tomorrow morning as well for the Oaks. But
Okay.
either way, well, I haven't heard anything, and I'm not expecting to get in. But if she gets in, I love to run her. She ships well and loves this track, so she'll either get in and run here, or we'll take it to the Blackout Susan.
George, again, we wish you a lot of luck on the undercard stakes, but certainly with Vekoma in the Kentucky Derby. I know, as they say, for a Kentucky guy, it would be a great accomplishment, and we'll be happy for you. So, again, good luck, and we'll talk again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on the show.
George Weaver, Vekoma, and a couple others on the Saturday card down at Churchill Downs. All right, let's jump right back into the action, get another trainer into the mix. Mike Trombetta, he has win coming into this one. Win in the last race, the Bluegrass that we just talked with George Weaver about Vekoma. He was a nice closing second behind Vekoma, and interesting entrant in here for Mike Trombetta and Live Oak Plantation. So let's talk some win Kentucky Derby with Mike Trombetta. Trainer Mike Trombetta, he has win in the Kentucky Derby on Saturday afternoon. Mike, good morning.
Good morning.
And wishing you a lot of good luck on Saturday. And before we talk Saturday specifically, I want to go back to last weekend. A lot of buzz on Twitter and whatnot due to that workout where win came up to the two mod horses, Tacitus and Country House, and passed in the stretch. Not something you see every day, certainly before a big race like this. From a trainer's perspective, what were your thoughts on the workout on Sunday?
Well, I thought our horse worked good, and everybody's horses seemed to work good that day. But you know, it all worked out fine. We just all kind of got at the half-mile pole at the same time. So, Derby preview.
That's kind of what it was like. It seemed like everybody engaged and came down to the wire, and you wound up ahead. I'm guessing that had to put a smile on your face.
Well, you know, I was just so relieved because, you know, had our riders not held their lane and stayed off the rail a bit, and Mr. Room could have, you know, I wanted.
Correct?
Yeah, he went in. You know, and regular
Beyond better, you were first over his interview from this children.
Yep.
I'll say the rest. People were when the run on book is so area. If really not a blue.
But what that grand show mile would go to
and I was like some so for things you're so only should lead up anyway. And we were the race as well.
Yeah, he's
and for that others fair please and a little bit fair has to be.
Well, you know, also between transform,
and we had when we run with the from team miss. I'm guessing all feeling and that's wins with their no.
I don't know about this. That's right. What I trick.
Well, should made back this is the legend spot. Who did he exactly take them? That's good story. Not the position. I good work on excellent Saturday. Who's great game for years. We will look at win. Trainer he thought it by like the feet of and sins more party and Derby
popular just laughing it was
so the old time room set a lot there and so the thing that
it is
as somebody kind of an older dump stage.
You know, the ones that are what we might say the which
yeah, you've got to get off. I last year fell behind the pound. Into the we I get this same 20 points short of the winners. Last game wrong.
I for it. 30 and well, I have the same as I for certain others for you.
Yeah, actually, in most I admit, but he's only a triple higher. He too. I hope I make it for soon.
Taking my, I still where I was trying to get dead, and you know, like to me nervous. I hope they're always aware about trainers going out at level what they're getting the time. Here's the point of this.
You were Colin or gears like me. I get the stories behind the races at the element. You see bot appearances. At the horse. Their petitions. I
agree with you. Like one of the ones to be up there to take us move.
Let's get which is with the the other one. I think that I'll give you with Gary.
And not out there at home. It's more education to work out. Like we're from, like you know, time. There's kind of, I probably love working. It's a feat of myself when I'm coming back to him. I hope I'm a bit of a refuser. When I'm probable, it's not, it's on the Todd Pleasant. It's a fight 0. The one that's very good to me. I was extremely things about the way the race and others turning for that. We know he's trying to may have to fight it.
It's much, 2-star last year. He was here.
Agree. No, okay, the idol stuff is good with the race horse must be improved.
Down when happened and being all that's especially where Kentucky Derby versus
big point. Usually out there, some just want to competitive. It just fits Bill well.
I look at 14 here, just a little about as well. And as I say, when I say Derby, too much.
Right.
And that used to make Tasm and there once even what we have at the out of the 19 and that sort of whole day and win is one versus 8 and a lot of especially in this be better under the cap and feelers enough that's how basic mentions some of the radio screen race so much that will like survey will are taught by the never as a very good and after their circa pick board really gives us to be like as we go the I'm not for the dash it is pick up the project you pick trusting there to fit for this they are like about a report much in the I take team back but I try those but it's fully happen when they get they get